guys, it's Di and welcome back to my channel. So today I just wanted to do a really casual sit down question and answer video. I put a call out for questions on my Instagram stories and you guys had a ton of great questions. So we're just gonna chat about those today, just do a really kind of informal chit chat vlog. So grab some tea, grab some coffee, whatever you've got close to you, and let's just sit and chat for a little bit. And I meant to answer some of them in stories that day and I did not get around to it. So if you left me a question that day, thank you, and I will do it again and I will try to answer some of them in stories next time. Life is a learning experience, right? But we're gonna dive in. A lot of the questions centered around Disney, of course, but some of the questions were just kind of good general life questions. So we will kind of jump in. So the first question we're going to start out with is, how much per year do you budget for travel? And I've actually kind of wanted to do a whole video about this because I've done quite a bit of research on this specific question and I think it's a really interesting one. So the whole idea of dividing up your income where it's the 30, 20, 50, that kind of dividing up where it's going to different categories. We try to live in a way where we have things divided up, going to different categories, and we're only spending, certain percentages on certain things. And we live very loosely, kind of within those parameters. So we try to make sure that only a certain amount's going to housing, that a certain amount's being saved, that a certain amount is going towards fun things, which for us typically means travel. And for us, eating out is actually a very low category. When we're at home, I know you don't really see this a lot because, when you see us at Disney, we're eating out all the time. But when we're at home, we actually eat out very, very little, like practically almost never. So when we go to Disney, it's very much a splurge, and like our normal activity there may not necessarily reflect what our normal activity at home is. At home, we eat a lot of meals at home. We usually eat dinner at the dinner table every night, and so that's just kind of our routine at home. But back to the question, how much per year do you budget for travel? I actually started doing research into this because I wanted to see if we were like above average, below average. And typically what I found when I researched it is it's recommended that the travel falls into kind of that 30% of like fun money or your discretionary spending. It obviously can't be all of that because that's all discretionary spending, but typically travel for most people is in the 5 to 10% range. And so that to me was a really good guide. Now for us, you have to remember we have a couple different kinds of travel. If we have travel for work, then that's one thing. It's paid for by work and it doesn't really fall into that. But for family vacations, I think in that kind of 5 to 10% of your kind of family net income is a good range to look at. So for us, we typically try to do like 1 or 2 what I call larger trips per year that maybe go Disney. Like next year we have a cruise booked. And then we try to do in regular years, of course the past 2 years have not been normal, but we try to do small weekend trips as well. So Great Wolf Lodge, going up to Opryland and things like that kind of around here. We are members to a number of local places. There is a space center that is near us. There is a zoo that's up in Nashville. We're members of that. We're members to a number of different places. There's like a historical place here that we're members of. The botanical gardens we're members of. So we get memberships to a lot of places if they're local. And we think that we'll go multiple times throughout the year because for us, that's really like a cost savings as well. That's not necessarily travel, but just kind of a little insight into how we do our discretionary spending. We really enjoy going to go do some things like that. And so we kind of just look at that in one, kind of bucket. Typically we'll do like 2 like larger type of trips, like I said, and then a number of smaller ones. Sometimes those get offset by my work. Obviously YouTube for me and kind of sharing all of the creator side of things, that is work. So if it's offset by work or it's being expensed out, then that kind of changes everything. So just keep that in mind when you're watching people that do social media for a living, then that can sometimes impact, how many trips they're going on and that sort of thing. Another great question was, would you ever travel to Great Britain and Europe? If so, where would you go? I don't know if you haven't watched this since like the early days. My husband actually has quite a bit of family in the UK. So the UK is definitely one of those places I would like to go eventually. COVID again has put a damper on this. We may have gone sooner if not despite COVID. But definitely when the kids are older so they can sit on a longer flight. I may actually travel to more international locations on my own, even before we bring the kids. I have a friend, if you guys watch Pink to Paris, we met a long time ago when we both did LV videos. She actually still does them. And we met because we both lived around the Chicagoland area. And she's actually started doing solo travels to like Egypt and things like that. And I think that's really fun and really awesome. And she said she's going to India next. So stay tuned because maybe there'll be some more mom solo travels in the future. But that's one of the places I would like to go. As far as the family as a whole, I definitely think England is probably one of those places that's on the list, and probably when they're in high school, we'll try to go do stuff like that. England, Paris, maybe Japan. But before you're going to see anything like that from us, I will say we'll tackle something like Hawaii first. I think Hawaii will probably be our gateway because Hawaii is a very long flight for us, or will be a couple series of long flights because we have to get all the way across the country and then fly out to Hawaii. So that will probably be our first foray into a longer flight with the kids, and we'll see how that goes and get back to you before we take them to a completely different country. All that being said, you know, I've been to the Turks and Caicos and I would take the kids there. That feels much closer, even though it's technically international location. It's in the Caribbean. I took a flight out of Miami to get there both times I went. And it just seems like a little bit more doable than like even going to Hawaii, even though Hawaii is domestic, because it's such a long flight. Anyhow, hopefully COVID will go away and we can start doing some of those things. That is the one thing where I think we would have gone to Alani a lot sooner, but I really don't want to book a long trip, which is already going to be stressful, and then you have to worry about, oh my gosh, what if someone has a test that didn't turn out great, like right before you go, and you're all stressed. I don't want to go into it stressed. All right, so let me pull my list up and see what other great questions they were. How do you make time for yourself and your interest without mom guilt? So I've definitely been getting better at this as I've gotten a little bit older. When the kids were younger, I mean, it was tough. I mean, I had a lot of mom guilt about doing anything for myself because I felt like I had to be, especially as a stay-at-home mom, I felt like I had to be doing everything for them all the time. And if I wasn't, I was slacking on my duties. And honestly, me getting a job outside of the home was really kind of the dividing line for me breaking out of that mental cycle. So not to say that would be what works for everyone, but for me getting a job outside the home was getting that little bit of independence and myself back and kind of reframing all of that. And so that definitely really helped. So now I, will go do things for myself. I will travel on my own, and I don't really have any guilt going to do it because, I have my own needs and wants as well. So I'd say if there's anything that has been the dividing line for me on how I got past that, it was by getting that bit of independence back where I was kind of doing something for myself. Because even though I make an income off of doing social media, it still is very centered around being home, and previously in the past was very centered around basically whatever I was doing with the kids. So getting that job outside the house really was the key to getting past a lot of that. And then you just have to get to a point where you realize you have needs too, and you have to make sure those are met to be able to take care of everyone else. Oh, Small Choices had another really great question. She said, what's your bedtime routine like? My daughter is around the same age as your oldest. So if you followed us when they were really little, we were on a 7 to 7 routine, and we had like a lot of structure and a lot of routine. It worked for us. They were really great sleepers, and having that routine, I think, just was a part of them being such really great sleepers. Now that they've gotten older, we still have a routine. We've adjusted those times slightly because obviously they have to get up earlier to go to school and they go to bed a little bit later. But really keeping that routine set, I think, just helps the rhythm of all of us knowing what to expect. It helps us plan. And then they're also just still really great sleepers. So whether that's genetic or whether it's because we've been, very routine, it may have something to do with both. But typically, to get up from school, they have to get up like at 6:30 or 6:45 to give you an idea of what time they have to get up in the mornings to get ready, and then for all of us to get out the door. And then at night, we start our bedtime routine at 7:30. Even now that they have activities, and sometimes those activities are 6 to 7 p.m., we start bedtime at 7:30. What that means is that 7:30, it's like a wind down time. No more electronics after 7:30. It's starting to do shower times at 7:30 and putting pajamas on and hanging out. Then they need to go to their rooms like around by at least like 8:20 or 8:30 or so. And they can sit there and read for a little bit, but typically lights out on a school night is going to be around like 8:30 or shortly thereafter. It's like lights out all the time, typically by 9 o'clock, even on the weekend. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what we do. Having those set times of 7:30 and 8:30, kind of those keystones of, you know, this is when electronics turn off and we start working on all the things we need to do to, you know, get ready for bed, taking a shower, putting your pajamas on, brushing your teeth, etc. And then they can go to their rooms, hang out and chill for a little bit, read some books. Typically lights out at 8:30. Again, it just goes back to that routine. So Angel Girl asked, what was your very first job? I think that this is an interesting question. So I've loved to work since I was younger, and I've always typically had multiple jobs at one time. So I'd say my very first job that was getting paid and having to go show up and do, I was actually a dance assistant at some of the dance studios that I took classes at, and then I became basically like an assistant teacher. And then I eventually became one of the regular teachers, and then became a coach, and then I eventually had my own dance studio. But even all throughout that time, I typically always had at least 2 or 3 other jobs. So the whole time when I was younger, from the time I was an assistant and then a teacher, I basically was a dance instructor that whole time throughout high school, college, until I had my dance studio. And then I had a number of jobs other than that. So my first job outside of teaching dance was working at a truck stop, a Popeye's Chicken, which did not last very long because my face would break out because of all the grease in the air and just being around all that. So having to start going to a dermatologist all the time, like completely offset, I'm sure, any amount I was making. So that did not last very long, but I did that for a while. And then I was still teaching dance this whole time. My first job when I went to college, and then I had for probably the longest period of time, was I worked at Target. And so I mentioned that a couple times, but I worked at Target. I was a cashier. And then I remember I was very sad because I went to college in one town and the Target was in a different town. I had to drive about like 20 plus minutes to get there and back. And so, you know, like gas was a big deal when you're a college student, and gas went up to $2 per gallon, which was a huge deal when I was in college about 20 some odd years ago. And so I eventually had to make the really tough decision that I had to get a job in the town where my college was, because there was plenty of jobs there. There was just no Target. So I had to get a job in the town I was in because I was spending so much on gas, because it went to $2 a gallon. I mean, honestly, guys, I don't know how people do it now. So that was probably, I had that for over a year. I worked there for maybe about a year and a half, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And then I worked at a number of places, usually simultaneously, still teaching dance this whole time. I worked at Finish Line at the mall in the town where my college was. I was a student worker. For a time period, I was doing the student worker Best Buy, and teaching dance. So I had 3 jobs at one time. And then I think I got offered more money to go to Finish Line, so I moved from Best Buy to Finish Line. Yeah, so I've always had a lot of jobs. So I've worked retail, and then after college, I moved to a different area and opened a dance studio up. And I did that for a little while, and then married my husband. I sold the dance studio to a new owner, and we ended up moving all over the place. And that is pretty much a snapshot of my early working life. I do think that I've always had like kind of a desire to be doing a lot of different things, and for whatever reason it works for me. So like right now I'm making this video and I'm doing that to put on YouTube, and that's like a job for me. And I also have a job and career outside the house, which goes hand in hand with everything that I've learned working in social media, but it's in a slightly different field. I do have to say, I think if I had to talk about one toxic trait, not that she asked this necessarily, I think that probably my toxic trait, which goes in with working a lot, is I turn everything into work. I turn all my hobbies into something I can monetize, and I turn everything into work. So for whatever reason, that's just the way that my brain is wired. So for example, I loved dance growing up, and so I ended up becoming a dance instructor and having a dance studio and then having a dancewear business. And so that's, you know, I turned that hobby into a job. Then in the next phase of life, I was getting my master's degree, and I had, you know, some time. I was a graduate research assistant, so I actually worked for the marketing department as well. So again, I had multiple jobs because I was a full-time student. I worked for the marketing department. And I also started, I was very into handbags at this point. This is when I started my YouTube channel, and I started flipping handbags just for fun during that time period. So that was another hobby that I turned into a job. And then I think you could probably say that about, you know, making YouTube videos. I started doing it for fun and to help people on forums. And then it turned into like this life of its own, and it turned into something I was bringing in an income off of. So I have to say, there's like one toxic trait I have. I can't just do anything for fun. It doesn't matter what it is, like I will find some way to monetize it. So whatever that weird like way that my brain is wired, I cannot undo that. It's just instantly I start thinking like, oh, you could do this, you could do that, you could sell this. And yeah, so that's why it's so fun to hang out with me. So let's see, there was more good questions. Oh, this is a really good question to just follow up that one about me turning literally everything into a job or monetizing it. Mrs. Veronica asked, what advice would you give to someone about making Disney vacation family vlogs? Well, first of all, it's something that I've learned a lot about over the years. And I think that there's something new that I learn every single time I do it. I don't think that like I'm an expert at it at all, because I don't consider myself a videographer, or consider myself a creator. So in a sense, like I'm thinking of things to talk about, and sometimes I forget about the videography part. But a couple different things that I would highly recommend if you're wanting to do family vlogs for either yourself or to put on YouTube if you're like starting a Disney channel. This is my #1 tip that I can give you. I learned this very early on. So 2 tips. Bring an extra camera, have extra SD cards, so bring extras of things. Early on, I learned to have an extra camera, and luckily I had one with me in case something malfunctioned, because on one of my early Disney trips, probably around 2014, 2015, I was filming and I dropped my camera. And that was the first and last time that it ever happened. So after that point, I got one of these lanyards, and on every single trip since then, I have had a lanyard with one of these clips on there, and I can't show you because I'm filming with it. Let me see, I have extras all over here. But what I do is I just take the wristlet that's on the camera, we'll just use this to show you, and I clip the wrist strap to this clip, and then I put it around my wrist. But if it falls off my wrist, or if I just get busy with the kids and I, you know, let go for some reason, the camera is still attached to me. And that is my #1 tip that I can give you. If you're thinking about filming at a theme park, or really just any like kind of hectic family outing, get a lanyard, put a clip on it, and clip the camera to yourself. Now this will only work for the small handheld cameras that have a wrist strap, but if you're using one of those, it's great. You know, a lot of vloggers, they have like the full setup. I actually have like a huge camera and a gimbal, and I have all of that. And I just, every single time I get into Disney, I just go, I don't want to deal with it. But I know that as I start going on these trips where I'm going on my own, I need to start breaking out all that equipment, because it's actually more socially acceptable down there than probably anywhere else. When you go around, you see a lot of people vlogging, and it's just kind of a natural part of the process there. So it's very acceptable to do there if you're interested in doing it. And honestly, Disney videos are some of my favorite videos to watch back. So many amazing memories we've made there. And I'm so glad that I videoed all that time when the kids were little, because like that's just time gone. But now I can go and I can watch those videos and it just makes me so happy. So definitely bring extra supplies like SD cards, extra camera, and put your camera on a lanyard. We may have to do this in parts because I'm starting to lose my voice, but let's try to do 2 more questions. So Pleasantly Perfect Memories asks, what has been your favorite trip to Disney so far? This is so tough. So each trip to Disney we try to make a little bit different than the ones prior to it. And I definitely have a few that really stand out, but narrowing it down to one is so tough. I think that probably one of my top trips that we've been on with Disney has been the Disney Creator Celebration. Not only was that right before the world shut down and like that last amazing memory that we got, you know, before the world just went crazy. It was a really great relaxing trip, which those trips can be kind of hectic sometimes, but we stayed at the Riviera. I loved having that separate bedroom. The bathrooms were really huge and amazing. So that was very comfortable. It was a land and sea trip, which I love cruising. I cannot wait to get back to cruising. So it had that element where we were on land and sea and got to go on the Disney Dream, which was amazing. And then it was just a really relaxed trip, and it was kind of like that last time. We knew things in the world were kind of like getting a little dicey and maybe not quite normal, but it was kind of like that last little glimpse of like life pre-COVID. And I think we almost kind of knew at the time it might be, although I don't think we knew fully what we were into. But yeah, I'd say that trip really stands out in my mind as just being one of the best like trips we've gone on conference-wise. As far as trips we've booked on our own, Beach Club, it was amazing. Beach Club and Animal Kingdom Lodge, really tough competition. I would want to stay the 2 places for different reasons. Hands down, like if we just want a trip where we just want to hang out at the resort, sit by the pool, it's Beach Club all the way. That pool is amazing. I had the best time like just going to the pool. I wouldn't even have needed to go to the theme parks. Don't spread this around. I wouldn't have even needed to go to the theme parks on that trip. I could have just sat in the pool the whole time. That would not work for everyone in my family, but I could have just sat in the pool. So I really love that resort for that. But Animal Kingdom Lodge, the vibe there is just awesome. There's so much to do with watching the animals. It's definitely a top pick for our whole family. So those 2 trips really stand out as being like these standout trips that stood out for everyone, because we kind of have a recap between ourselves afterwards, and those 2 trips always come up as being standout trips for the whole family. So those, if you're watching back the vlogs, are some of my favorite experiences that we've done and places we've stayed. Favorite videos to watch back. Some of those early days when the girls are real tiny, and we did Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party and Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party just a number of times in a row. Some of my favorite videos to watch back. So many good memories. Let's do one more before I completely lose my voice, and I will do another one of these videos coming up in the next few weeks. Maybe I'll do one from Chicago when I'm there, because it just seems like it would be very nostalgic for me when I'm there, maybe when I get some time in the hotel room. But Mouse in Maine Sweets asks, what is your favorite thing about the ages that the girls are now? So this is a really tough question because I love, of course I just love the girls in general, but I love going through every single stage with them. I do have to say, like, the little, like, not necessarily baby stage, but honestly, like, the stage when they were 2-3 years old, I just loved that stage. Like, they were, like, becoming independent, but they still kind of needed me, and I look back and I really love that stage. It's probably one of my favorite stages. But that being said, it's really cool now that they are independent and they can do things on their own. So I can say, like, hey, go grab these cups and fill them up and go take them to the dinner table. It's nice seeing them becoming their own people and having to make choices, as much as that is stressful as a parent as well. I think that's the biggest thing about the stage that we're in now, and then I'm sure the next one that follows as teenagers, is that you really enjoy watching them grow up and you enjoy seeing the person they're turning into. but it comes with a lot of additional stress. And I'm sure we're like not even like scratching the surface of that. Because like the idea of like putting one of these kids behind the wheel of a car and trying to teach them to drive, like it makes this part of my head hurt right here. Like just, you know, it's kind of scary in a sense, because like they're becoming like their own little people, and they're becoming like young adults. They can make their own choices. And so it's really cool to watch, and that's one of my favorite parts, but it's also one of the scariest. I hope that makes sense. If you have tweens or teens, you probably understand that, how it can be like the best and the scariest at the same time. But yeah, it's really fun because I'm enjoying seeing the people that they are, because you think about that so much when they're little babies, like, oh, what is this baby gonna love, you know, when they get older. And so now I'm getting to watch that and be a part of it, and so that's really cool. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this question and answer. You guys had some really good questions, and I apologize I did not get to them all. So we will do another question and answer video in the future, and I will also try the next time that I put them on Instagram to answer some of them on there as well. But we'll be back with more day in the lives coming up here very soon. And I know literally everyone on YouTube is already decorating for Christmas, so I'm behind the power curve on that. But I will be decorating for Christmas probably fairly soon in the next couple weeks. So thanks for watching today, and have a great day.